Hello and welcome to WGTC Radio, the official podcast of entertainment website We Got This Covered. I'm Jonathan Lack.
And I'm Sean Chapman.
And we're coming to you live from a new central location.
Yes, we are. It's been a long time coming.
Yes. Sean and I, the new school year is starting. We decided to finally get out of those shitty fucking CU dorms. And maybe we can talk about that a little bit. That would be a fun podcast topic. We decided to get out of those shitty dorms and get an apartment. So we have a new apartment. And it's actually even closer to campus than my dorm was last year, which is ironic. But anyway,
yeah,
it's nice, and now we're recording out of this place.
Yeah, and it's going to be a lot easier to do the podcast from now on because we don't have to juggle all the stuff and be busy trying to set up the condo and everything. So
yes, so it's all good. Now, the thing is, you may hear some new sounds in the place because we're near a street. And you may hear traffic every once in a while. It'll just be nice white noise, though. It makes us sound like we're, live, like we're in New York or something.
It does sound like we're covering some sort of big live event.
Yes,
it's like New Year's Eve. You can hear the cars in the background.
Rockin' New Year's Eve with WGTC Radio,
coming to you live.
Yes. Anyway, so that's what's going on in our lives. Today's episode, we're going to be taking it kind of easy, talking about various things. One of the main topics on today's outline is the Nintendo 3DS XL. It's Nintendo's new handheld console. It's their new variation on the Nintendo 3DS. And I owned the 3DS when it first came out, and I bought the 3DS XL because it looked cool, and I'm going to have a review for you of that, and we're going to talk about the new game that came out with it, New Super Mario Bros. 2, although it didn't come with it. They could have bundled it in and saved some money, but no. They know Nintendo fans and Mario, it's like crack. They don't need to save you money on that.
That's weird because I always feel that it's it should be just standard Nintendo policy to have every new console come out with the Mario game in the box.
Yeah,
that's how it should be.
Yes. But sadly, no. Bought it at the same time, so it's all good. GameStop had a fantastic trade-in deal, so I do want to tell you about that right up front. If you are thinking about getting an XL, GameStop will give you $100 for your 3DS, and that's an incredible deal because it's going new for $160 right now.
Yeah, wow. General GameStop policy for used stuff is we'll give you some pocket lint and a few pennies.
I know. I don't usually trade in there, but for consoles, sometimes they try to make an effort, and so that was nice. Anyway, we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about New Super Mario Bros. 2. And before then, we're just going to talk about some random topics. And we're kind of taking it easy this week because next week things get crazy on a couple of fronts. School starts for us, but who gives a shit about that?
Yeah, I don't give a shit about that.
No, I don't either. And I should emphasize we're excellent students. Well, we just don't give a shit.
Yeah.
Anyway, so that's going on, but more importantly, Doctor Who is starting soon, so we're going to have all this Doctor Who stuff to talk about when that starts, if BBC ever announces a start date. I bet BBC America is banging their head against a wall, waiting for them to announce so they can start running promos and stuff.
Yeah, do you know why they're not announcing when the next season starts?
It's so crazy because they've already screened the first episode to critics. They've done the public press screenings. They've been very adamant it's starting soon. They've got BBC is running promos, I guess, nonstop for it. The marketing campaign is there. I just don't know, and I think it's one of those cases where Doctor Who is so omnisciently popular at this point. They don't need to. People will tune in when Doctor Who starts. They could not announce the date, and it would start, and someone would, they'd be like, Doctor Who's playing. Okay, we're going to watch Doctor Who.
Seriously.
So, yeah. Again, it's like crack for British people.
And for me.
Yes.
And for me.
And for Anglophiles in other parts of the world. So, we're going to be talking about that in the next couple weeks, and all sorts of other topics. It's sort of like the perfect storm is coming in. There's video games coming out. There's movies coming out.
The video game season's starting up again. It's been really barren for a while. There have been a few fairly big releases that I haven't looked at, like Sleeping Dogs and Darksiders 2. But
yeah. I thought about getting Sleeping Dogs, but it sounds really good.
Yeah, it looks really, really awesome to me.
Yeah,
both those games do.
If I'd known it was coming out, I would have put myself in a better position to spend $60. But I didn't. I heard about it, but then it wasn't until the reviews came out that it seemed like it was notable.
Yeah, well, that game just kind of came out of nowhere, where it was in development hell for a really, really long time. It passed through a number of developers. It passed through a number of different titles. I forget. It was going to be a part of another. I think it was Streets of Hong Kong or something. I forget the name of it. It was going to be part of another franchise, and then they're like, well, this franchise really sucks, and so let's just make it its own game. But yeah,
that's the thing to do.
Yeah, Sleeping Dogs just came out of nowhere and is getting really good reviews.
Yep.
Same with Darksiders 2. So, yep, video game season's starting up again, so it looks like we'll have some more stuff to talk about on that front.
Yep. And I guess I'll give you guys an update. Last week, Sean and I did our big overview of the Studio Ghibli Festival that's going on in Denver, and it started last weekend, and I've been to all 3 films that were this week's films, and it's a magical experience, I'll tell you. You hear the term, you're seeing a Miyazaki movie on a brand new 35mm print, and if you know anything about film, you know how cool that sounds, but it's not until you're sitting in the theater watching that you really just see how gorgeous it is. The Miyazaki film this weekend was My Neighbor Totoro, which is obviously one of his masterpieces, and just visually it's so powerful. And, I'd only seen the film on DVD, and it looks good on DVD, but you don't really notice how just incredibly detailed the backgrounds are until you see it on 35mm on the big screen. You can see every brush stroke, every line. It's just gorgeous. The colors are so vivid. And also, and this is something that I just hadn't thought of before because I'd only seen these films on home video, they're very obviously composed for big screen presentations.
Yeah, I definitely got that sense when I was watching them.
Yeah. Definitely there are scenes with Totoro where how he positions this giant, bear creature in the frame is for maximum visual impact on the big screen. And it's just really gorgeous. And the other 2 movies this weekend were Whisper of the Heart, which is another one of my favorite movies, and it was so much fun to watch. Went to that one with my brother Thomas. Well, and Totoro, and he hadn't seen either of them. And it was cool to just see those with someone who'd never seen them before and was getting to see them for the first time this way. Just magical experiences. And then the last one was The Cat Returns, which I want to talk about that one a little bit more.
Okay.
Because when we talked about last time, I had actually only seen half the movie. I fell asleep halfway through and turned it off. And I was trying to tell you guys about it without that. And I feel bad now because the second half is where The Cat Returns becomes one of the single weirdest movies I've ever seen. So, Sean, you're familiar with the film Prometheus.
Yes, I am very familiar with the film Prometheus.
We've shouted about it.
Yes.
And we talked about how the last half of Prometheus, it feels like they're going with a different story every 5 minutes.
Yeah. They just keep on dropping plot lines every 2 seconds.
That's basically The Cat Returns, but in an entertaining way. Because the movie doesn't really start coherently, and you're not expecting like a complex story from it.
Yeah.
But then in the last 45 minutes, she's taken to the cat kingdom, Haru, the main character, and she gets turned into a cat. And then she's really freaked out by that for a minute, and it's like, they go full horror for about 5 minutes, where one of her best friends is drowned in this vat of jelly.
What?
This cat who's her friend is drowned.
Oh.
It's still a grotesque image though. And then she's she's been turned into a cat and she's crying and the music is really intense and they're all kind of laughing and it's and up till then it was one of the most lighthearted Studio Ghibli movies. And it's what the fuck just happened? And then they go back to lighthearted because the Baron comes in and they do this dance and suddenly it becomes sort of this noir espionage thing again where the Baron is the private eye. And then it becomes action thriller where they have to go through this giant maze to find the exit. So I'm really labyrinth.
Confused right now.
It's like labyrinth for a while. Then they have to climb this giant tower, and it just becomes an all-out action movie. And then it becomes at the end this really sappy romance where she's helping the prince and this peasant girl connect. And then
what? It really does sound like you're describing 5 different movies.
I know, and it's awesome because the thing is, they're doing each of them really well. Whoever the director was clearly understands the language of horror and mystery and action, and it's a really thrilling thing, but it makes no cohesive sense. And so it's you have to see this movie at some point in your life. It's so interesting. And on the big screen, it really is a beautifully drawn movie. It's got lots of great artwork and stuff, and the character designs are very different than anything Ghibli had done up to that point. They're very simple and sort of... And on DVD, I thought it was just poorly drawn, this was a low-budget one, but you can tell on the big screen and on 35mm, they were drawn for fluid motion, so you could do all these action scenes a little more efficiently, and it looks really cool. But it's a very different kind of movie for them. It is 10 different kinds of movies.
Yeah, so, it just
And all with cats. I can't emphasize that enough, how much cat-related humor there is in this movie.
Are there a lot of weird cat puns? It seems like that would be hard to get across in translation.
Yeah, I think I got some of them just from my limited knowledge of Japanese, but, they were definitely simplifying the language, I could tell in the subtitles, but, yeah. I'm sure there were plenty of cat puns. There's this really weird
Maybe it's better that you didn't watch it and didn't understand the Japanese, so you didn't know the cat puns. That might have made you enjoy the movie more.
That's probably true. There's this freaky fucking scene that I should show you, Sean, so you can have a heart attack watching it, where this cat does this striptease.
I didn't expect that.
It's not exactly a striptease, but it's like this weird magic dance where it's like got stuff painted on it, and it's like moving its body to look like different creatures, and it's like got this weird music, and it's grotesque. It's so grotesque.
Are you sure you weren't like high or something? Like
I don't know.
Did you like hallucinate this movie? I doubt that this movie exists now, just based on your description.
This is the first time I'd eaten popcorn at a movie in a while, because they have free popcorn at the Denver Film Center. I'm like, I'll just grab some. And maybe they spiked their popcorn with mushrooms. I don't know.
Maybe they did. I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm a little concerned for you now.
Okay. Well, anyway, so the Studio Ghibli Festival's going great. Next weekend is Castle in the Sky and Kiki's Delivery Service, which are two of the best in the whole canon, so I'm really excited. Going to be a good weekend. Sean, what's going on with you?
Not much. Over the last few podcasts, I have been sort of chronicling my adventures through the games I collected off of the Steam Summer Sale, and this week I began sort of the last one I got, which is an old, I think it came out in 2007 or maybe 2008, this old RPG called The Witcher from CD Projekt. And I've always really wanted to play The Witcher, especially after The Witcher 2 came out, because The Witcher 2 got a lot of good buzz and it's got a lot of good reviews. And so I wanted to play that one because I'm a huge RPG fan. If you've listened to this podcast before, you know, like on my list of top favorite games, it's like was dominated by RPGs. And so I really wanted to play The Witcher 2, and I hadn't really heard about The Witcher when it had come out. So I was like, okay, The Witcher is on sale. I'll pick that up. I'll see what it's like, because I want to know this. I don't want to play the sequel before you play the original, because they're story-based games. It'd be kind of distracting. And part of my personality is I absolutely cannot start something knowing there's like some like piece of the story presented earlier that I am missing. That's why I've watched every single episode of Doctor Who, because I'm just obsessive about that kind. Like I can't. It's to the point where I can't even decide to watch Star Trek: The Next Generation if I haven't already watched Star Trek: The Original Series all the way through. Like
That's weird.
I had to watch all of Star Trek: The Original Series to be able to watch Star Trek: The Next Generation, because I just have to do that, which makes reading comic books nigh impossible for me, because comic books are like
800 issues?
Yeah, and they're like, and it's just like, it's not only that, it's like, you know, if you're trying to get into Spider-Man, you can't just read Spider-Man, you have to read all the Spider-Man series, you have to read Fantastic Four, it's like you have to read Daredevil, you have to read Moon Knight, you have to read Punisher, because Spider-Man's going to be in all of those comic books.
So what you're saying is the New 52 was really good for you.
Yeah, New 50, that's why I liked New 52 with DC, and I really liked the Ultimate Universe until they fucked it up with Marvel. And so, it's like, that's why I like those comic books, because I can get into those. And another reason why I like really old comic books is because they don't have all the massive amounts of continuity behind them. But anyways, so that's why I decided to pick up The Witcher instead of just going straight to The Witcher 2. And I have to say, playing The Witcher is kind of a frustrating experience, because it so clearly has a lot of elements of a really good game, but I just can't get into it. And it's definitely one of those RPGs where it's like you need to put a good 12 hours into it until you can really get into the game. And it's like I just can't bring myself to get that far into the story, because nothing particularly interesting has happened yet. And one thing that really pisses me off about The Witcher, and that I think just needs to stop fucking happening in video games, is never, ever make your main character have fucking amnesia as a fucking plot point. That pisses me off so much in video games now, where it's every single fucking RPG you pick up, it's like, oh, okay, yes, he has amnesia. I'm going to have to spend this entire game, he's going to have almost no character whatsoever, and I'm going to spend the entire game trying to find out his mysterious past, because he's got fucking amnesia. For no apparent reason whatsoever. It just pisses me off so much, because it's just
just a cop-out to do exposition.
Yeah, it really is, and it just feels like that in this game, where it's like, oh, for fuck's sake, we're doing the fucking amnesia thing again. It's just, it's really frustrating, because I'm pretty sure the game's based on a series of, I want to say, German fantasy novels. It's some European fantasy novel series the Witcher series is based on. And so, maybe it's not the game developer's fault. I don't know how closely it follows the books, like if it strictly follows their plot lines or what. But they've clearly have this really intricate, deep, sort of like fantasy setting with a lot of politics and a lot of really interesting characters and a lot of interest, like how the magic works and everything is pretty interesting. But it's so hard to just get through that like first kind of 10-hour grind where you don't really know anything about what's going on, because your character has amnesia, and so every time he comes up to someone, it's like, this guy knows about my past, now I'm going to have this like hour-long conversation with him, and he's not really going to tell me anything that I really want to know. It's like if I was Gerald, the main character, if I was actually this guy and I was talking to this person who knew me in the past, I would ask a lot more fucking questions. It's just like it so takes you out of the experience because you can't role play properly because your character's got amnesia, but it's like he never like really is trying to find out. It's like it's like this girl is clearly like your girlfriend from your past life. It's like sit down and have a fucking conversation for like 2 seconds so you can find out what the fuck is going on instead of just being like, I guess I'm going to go on a quest now. I'm just going to go fight some monsters.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I know exactly what you mean with the amnesia thing. It's just like that's a cop out.
Yeah.
It's weird because there was a time when it was like that's the bold thing to do in storytelling, and now it's the cliche.
Yeah,
it's like really ultimate.
It's such a huge cliche, and once they pull the amnesia thing, everything after that is so by the numbers. It's just like it's so predictable where all the fucking amnesia stuff goes. It's just like so frustrating.
Yeah,
because I just want. It's like I don't. You can create a character in a role-playing game that I can get into without having he can know his past and I cannot know his past, and that's fine. It's like we both don't need to be in this like fish out of water situation in every fucking RPG you play.
Yeah.
It's so frustrating. Then also the combat is really I don't want to say it's bad, but it's really uninvolving because it's kind of like almost Diablo-esque where it's basically you just one interesting thing about the game is that you can play, if you want to, you could play the entire game just with the mouse. I think it would take a really long time, but if you're a gamer with like a disability or something like that and you can't use a keyboard and mouse at the same time, that's pretty cool. But it feels like they kind of, I don't know if they decided to do that after they came up with the combat system or what, but it feels like the combat system's kind of really dumbed down because you basically left-click to attack on enemies, and then it's got this kind of timing thing. But it really amounts to you left-click on an enemy, then you wait 2 seconds and left-click again, then you wait 2 seconds and left-click again, and that's a combo. And it's like, and that's basically all you can do. But you can switch between certain styles, but it's basically like, okay, this enemy's weak against strong style, this enemy is weak against fast style, and so it's like, I'll just use fast style on this person and do a combo. And so it's like, the combat gets really, really tedious, and I don't know, if after like 15 hours of gameplay and I've got my character really leveled up, if it gets a lot more interesting. But it's just like, it's so hard to push through that grind. So I think I'm going to try to stick with The Witcher because from everything I've heard, The Witcher 2 is really, really good. So I really want to get into that. But
yeah,
pushing through this game is kind of rough.
But you're never going to rethink your strategy on you have to play things.
Yeah, it's like I can't not do it.
Okay.
It's like I have to. It's this need. I can't. It's like I can't just play The Witcher 2. As soon as there's one thing that even hints at something that happened in the first game, I'm like, fuck, I have to just go play the first game right now. Or I will spend about 5 hours on like Wikipedia or like the Witcher wiki and just like look through everything about the first game. Yeah. It's like I just have to do it. It's a compulsion. It's a disease. I've got a problem.
Yep. Well, CU has free psychological counseling. You can get 6 sessions.
Yeah, fuck those people.
Okay.
Yeah.
This podcast brought to you by Counseling and Psychological Services at CU Boulder.
Fuck those people.
All right.
So that's what I've been doing. I've been very frustrated by and I should say that like a lot of the voice acting and a lot of the writing is actually really good in The Witcher, and so that's kind of like
what's keeping you going.
Yeah, it's like a lot of the characters it's like I want to find out a lot about some like the other characters in the world because they're very interesting. But it's like that's kind of what's pushing me through it. But yeah, it's kind of hard.
I gotcha.
Yeah.
I gotcha. Well, okay, I think that's all the sort of stuffage to talk about.
Yep.
For now. So we're going to transition into a discussion of the Nintendo 3DS XL, our main topic for the show. And I guess we should just start by talking about, the original 3DS and sort of my feelings on that. Have you ever played the 3DS, Sean?
No. I don't. I've never actually played it.
Did you ever own a DS?
Yes, I owned the first generation original model of DS, and I played with it a little bit. But
okay.
I mostly only used it to play Game Boy Advance games, and I realized my Game Boy Advance SP was way better at that.
It was.
Yeah, I just never really got into that sort of dual screen style of gameplay. Yeah. So it's like I never really checked out a lot of the really good DS games. It's sort of like a generation of handheld games I never did anything with.
Yeah. Well, I definitely think, maybe we should go back and just talk about this in terms of Nintendo handhelds. It's always been one of my favorite parts of Nintendo. I think they've always had it's been a good history from the Game Boy to the Color. And I came in with where like I think my first handheld purchase was like the Game Boy Color right when it came out. So it was like that period where you had all the Game Boy library to play, and then the new Color games. Awesome generation. There were just so many fun games.
And by that you mean there's Pokemon to play.
There were a lot of other ones.
Well, but you ended up, or at least for me, I know there were tons of really great games, but it's like, all I fucking played was Pokemon, and I played it a lot.
Yeah, no, I had others, and I loved Pokemon too. But, I mean, those were great, but there were a lot of good Mario games. The Wario Land series was fucking incredible. I still play those. Like, they released them on the 3DS Virtual Console, and I have the first Wario Land there. It's so much fun. I love playing it. And, and then I, got my Game Boy Advance, and eventually the SP and stuff. We'll talk about that whole trend. Mm-hmm. But the Advance still stands as one of my favorite generations, because I have so many Game Boy Advance games, and I still play them a lot. And the thing that I've always noticed about the Advance when I look through my collection is the Advance was basically the Super NES emulator system.
Yeah, I know. That's what I was about to say. That I basically, all the games I played on the Game Boy Advance SP that I really loved were Super Nintendo games.
But they were such good, like, remakes of those.
Yeah.
And it was I think that's a good way to play those. Like, I would rather play those games on the go on a portable handheld than I would on a TV.
Yeah.
A lot of the time. So that was fun. And then the DS, I mean, I still have all my DS games, and I don't know, we can look through some of them here. Let's see. I mean, first thing I pulled out was Pokemon.
Like I said, Pokemon. King of the handhelds.
I still have my Metroid Prime Hunters demo that came with the original DS.
I remember that. Have you ever played the actual Metroid Hunters?
I got it. It's right here.
Is it any good?
It's very good. It's a good game. It's a little hard to play because the DS, how you do it is you sort of control... You're holding the system, and you have the D-pad is how you move, and then you use your stylus on the touchscreen to aim, and then you shoot with L. And it's a good control scheme, but it can hurt your hand after a while. Yeah. But it's a really intense game. It's definitely on par, I think, with that Metroid Prime generation. I mean, there were a lot of good Metroid games. So we got some other Pokemon games here. Yep. Let's see. It has one of my favorite Dragon Ball Z fighting games, Super Sonic Warriors 2. I played that all the time. It's a fun one. It has a lot of flying, fluid combat. It was just a fun one. The Final Fantasy remakes for the DS were sensational. 3 and 4. 3 had never been out in the U.S. before then.
Yeah, like Japanese Final Fantasy 3, not Final Fantasy 6.
And Final Fantasy 4, which is American too. And they were both remade in 3D, graphics, and they're beautiful games.
Yeah, I have the Final Fantasy 3 one. I never got the Final Fantasy 4 one.
4 definitely took all the kind of mechanics from 3, the remake ones, and perfected them. Like, they moved it to the top screen and did more fight stuff on the bottom. But it was just, I mean, the sound, the images, it was just really gorgeous. So that was a good system for remakes and stuff like that. The Mario and Luigi RPG series, I have Partners in Time on that. That was a great game. They were really funny. Like, they managed to give Mario and Luigi these interesting stories that were actually kind of in depth, and then they made them really funny. They were good RPGs too. Like, they had a really good RPG system. If you've played the original Paper Mario, it's kind of like
that's what I was thinking.
Yeah,
original Paper Mario is awesome.
Yep, Yoshi's Island DS is fantastic. It was originally called Yoshi's Island 2, and I wish they would have kept that because that's what it is. If you've played the original Yoshi's Island for the Super NES, that's sort of one of the underrated gems of that period. And the DS one is even better, and it makes fantastic use of the dual screens, where you're playing on the top and bottom, so he'll just transition because the levels are play vertically and stuff. Well, they don't play vertically, but they have vertical components, so you can go top, bottom. Let's see, what else do I have here? Super Mario 64 DS, still one of my favorite remakes because that's one of my favorite games. Sonic Classic Collection came out 2 years ago. It's all the original Genesis games. I kind of like having that on the DS. It's just nice to have. It was cheap. And Mario Kart DS obviously is probably the best Mario Kart game ever made. Just everything the others had and more, so that was fun. But anyway, so that's kind of my opinion of the DS library. And so I was really excited for the 3DS when it came out. And I think my opinions on the 3DS so far have been, because I bought it the day it came out for $250 before they slashed the price by $100 2 months later. Fucking bastards. And, my opinion from the beginning was that it was a fantastic console that had poor support.
Yeah, that's everything. The 3DS is the only Nintendo handheld console that I haven't bought, and it really was kind of compelled by it. I was thinking about it, but the only game that I'd be interested in was the Ocarina of Time remake, but I don't really want to play Ocarina of Time, with me. I want to, if Ocarina of Time, I want to sit down and play it. I don't want to have it on a handheld console.
Which is one of the things the XL rectifies, which we'll talk about in a little bit. Makes it more substantial for just home playing. But anyway, Yeah, so and it's interesting because the arc of the 3DS, I think, again, when it came out, the system itself was just a fantastic piece of hardware. It had a generally good design. There were design choices I didn't like, and they've addressed those, and we'll talk about that. But overall, it was sleek looking. It was well built. It never broke for me or had any issues like that. They added the circle pad, which I really loved, which was like their version of an analog stick. It's the best portable analog stick I've ever seen. Like I remember the PSP had
PSPS, terrible one.
Yeah,
it's terrible.
But the one on the 3DS, and it's the same on the XL, so I can show this to you, Sean. Just really good. It's like it's got a good feel to it. It plays like a real analog stick. It's just that because it's on a portable, it doesn't push down. Mm-hmm. But other than that, it plays like any other analog stick, and that's one of the benefits of the 3DS. And then the 3DS had sensational graphics. I mean, really, really just good for a handheld. Big step forward for Nintendo. It was like, the Wii was a disappointment in some ways because it was like the GameCube 2.0 graphics. And the 3DS really was like, okay, let's step this up. It had like Wii-level graphics on some games, just really good graphics engine. And the 3D itself, Sean and I have talked before about 3D in movies and that we don't like it that much.
Yeah,
or at all.
It's not. Yeah, I'm not a particular fan of it.
But I think Nintendo found a way to integrate 3D on their games that is fantastic. I am a huge fan of 3D gaming because of the 3DS. Every 3DS game is just so enhanced by the use of 3D, and most of them use it really well. And the ones that don't need it, like Super Street Fighter 4, you would think that's a side-scrolling fighting game. They still find ways to integrate it, or you can just turn it off and it plays fine. I think that was one of the other wise choices. You don't have to use the 3D if you don't want to. And it's all glasses free. And that's one of our biggest issues with 3D in movies is the fucking hassle of...
having the glasses, then also inevitably the glasses, they tint down the movies. It's it affects how you actually watch the movie in a negative way.
And the game, 3DS found a way to bypass all of that. So it's all glasses free. It's all just as bright as anything else. And this is an effect I've always had trouble explaining to people, but the graphics are better with the 3D on than off because all the games feel, especially the Nintendo first-party ones, feel like they were designed with the 3D specifically in mind. So the character models and everything, if you turn the 3D off, look more pixelated than they do with it on. Like with it on, it just looks very natural and fluid. You really are pulled into the game more. And there's no eye strain or anything. It plays really well that way. Sometimes I get a little blur, and I actually suspect that's because I have, astigmatism. I wear glasses and stuff, and I think that's more my eye issues than the gameplay itself, because other people say they don't have that. But it's pretty occasional, and it almost always, on the good 3DS games, works great for me. So it was a good piece of hardware with almost no games out for it, and it took about a year for them to start rolling. Now I think there's a better library of games, but it's not picking up to the degree where, a year into the DS's lifespan, there was just a cavalcade of games for you to play. And they still aren't at that point. I hope they get there someday. But recently, what I've loved about the 3DS is the Virtual Console system. It's excellent. It's got Game Boy games and NES games and some other stuff, and they're all really cheap. So I buy a lot of games like that, and it's just fun to have those games on the go and re-experience them. And it's a really good Virtual Console system they've got set up, and sort of how the games emulate on your system. There's you can have restore points and all these things. So it's almost like playing a computer emulation where someone's hacked it.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
Yeah, so I like all that, and that's what sort of kept it going for me. The XL is the new version, came out on Sunday in the US, August 19th, and I bought the red edition. And basically the big draw here is that the XL makes the screens, they're each 90% larger than they were on the original. So Sean's looking at this now. Yeah. So these screens were half that size.
That's pretty small.
And I cannot emphasize, and the original screens were the size of the original DS. Mm-hmm. But I cannot emphasize enough how much the space does for the games. People were a little worried because while Nintendo upped the size of these screens, they did not up the resolution. And that sounds like it was a bad idea, but when you actually play it, you can't really tell. You can see the pixels a little more, but on the games that have good graphics, and most of the 3DS games, at least all the ones I own, have fantastic graphics, they look 2 or 3 times better. I mean, I cannot describe how good a game like Mario Kart or Super Mario 3D Land, or especially Zelda Ocarina of Time, I put that thing in and I was blown away. And I think the biggest thing I've taken away from the XL so far is that the 3DS always should have had a screen this size, because the graphics are so good. They demand a screen this size. I mean, Sean, can you tell how good those... I mean, it just looks good.
Yeah, it doesn't look particularly blown up to me at all. I'm kind of impressed that it doesn't.
Yeah, and
how much larger the screens are.
I'm starting a race on Mario Kart 7 just to show Sean this and sort of... so we can talk about it. But the graphics are just really fantastic. And on that screen size, and I even have the 3D off, but with the 3D on, it looks great too. But with that screen size, you can just see the art detail more, the graphics stand out more, and yes, the pixels are a little bit more noticeable, but if your game design is good and your graphics are strong, that won't matter. The pixels are there to build something, and if they're building it well, then blowing it up will make it look better, and that's what the XL, I think, brings to it. And to me, it's just that I think the graphics engine on the 3DS was always so impressive, and the things people have done with it on a game design standpoint have been so good, it should have been released with screens this size. There was no reason to do it with small screens, because, I mean, seriously, while we're talking, I'm going to put in Zelda now, just so I can show Sean that, because Zelda I always thought looked a little, I was like, well, this is a remake, it's modern, it looks okay, but shouldn't it look better than that? And then when I put it in on the XL, I'm like, oh, we just weren't seeing the full graphics.
Yeah, I mean, that was always one of the things that kind of frustrated me about the Ocarina of Time remake, is that they didn't make it available in any other way. Because I would be really interested in just playing Ocarina of Time with, like, the remade graphics just on, like, my Wii through, like, Virtual Console or something like that.
Yeah.
That's how I want to play Ocarina of Time.
Yeah. So we're starting that, but let's talk about some other design changes they've made that I really like. The main thing is that the original 3DS was all gloss, and they've changed it to matte, and that feels much better. If you played the DS Lite, it's the same material that the DS Lite was made from, and it just feels really good on your hands. It doesn't pick up fingerprints. You can grip it much easier, and the size of the system also makes it just easier to hold. The original 3DS, I got hand cramps playing it. But Sean, you're watching the opening cutscene to Ocarina of Time. Is that not gorgeous?
Yeah, no, it looks really good. And it's really weird. It's like I'm playing like the song in my head.
Yeah.
It's like I've played this game so much.
Yep.
Wait, why is the name of the file Clarence?
Because when I bought this, one of my favorite musicians, Clarence Clemens, had just passed away. So I did it in... You can name your character in Zelda anything, and I did it out of respect for Clarence Clemens, the greatest saxophone player who will ever live. So, there's Zelda. That's actually Link. But we're in Dodongo's Cavern, and I think it's a good level to show off just sort of the design of the art. It looks really good, doesn't it?
Yeah, what I'm most impressed about is it's just like with the N64 and like PlayStation 1 era games, they had this like really like jagged look.
Yeah. Because
it was the first sort of era of 3D, and it's just like it's really nice looking at Zelda and not having the like super jagged N64 era graphics.
Yeah, no, they did a good job with that, and having. I mean, we're talking mostly about the top screen. The big screen is, the same size as well, and it's great, too. I mean, the DS mostly uses the bottom screen for things like inventory and such, but it's nice to have it at that size because you can pick things out so much easier. It's just, that's the main thing I want to emphasize about the XL and why I think it's worth a purchase for fans of Nintendo's handheld consoles, is the games feel like this is how they were meant to be played. This is just a better size. And even with that in mind, yes, the system itself has gotten bigger. I mean, if you compare it to the original 3DS, it's substantially larger. You can't fit in your pocket as easily because the screens are bigger.
Yeah.
But even with that in mind, it's pretty lightweight. Hold that. I mean, for a system with that much going on in it, it's a lightweight system.
Yeah, the weight's not like an issue at all.
And it's actually a good substantial weight while you're holding it. It just feels good to be playing it with that weight. Again, it's all matte surface, so it doesn't feel glossy, and it's very easy to grip. The original 3DS had the worst design decision I've ever seen on a handheld, where they put the stylus, which on the DS Lite and the DSi and all those, was on the side on the right, so you could just, while you're playing it, you're playing with the buttons, you pull it out, you use it, you put it back in. It was really easy. On the original 3DS, they had it to the left of the cartridge slot, and you could not get that with your right hand. So you had to use your left hand, but you're using your left hand to move your characters. And the whole idea behind that is that it was on the right because you can take your hand away from buttons. You can't take your hand away from the control stick. So you could never use the stylus in gameplay on the original 3DS. That was a mistake. They've put it back. They also, the original 3DS stylus was telescoping, so it was like half the size and you had to pull it out when you played it, so it just was a whole fucking hassle. It's back to just the original DS Lite stylus that's nice and substantial to hold. It comes with a 4GB SD card, which is where you store everything. And that's an upgrade from the 2GB that came with the original. So it's nice that they actually give you the storage for it.
Yeah, that's nice. Like, I don't know how much there's like sort of like memory in the case of like if you're buying like a virtual game or whatever.
Right. You don't need that much. I mean, I had that 2GB card, and I'd only filled up about half of it and I have like 30 games on here because when you bought the system originally, if you bought it for the high price, they did this ambassador program where they gave you 20 downloadable games. So I had those plus another like 10 Game Boy games I'd bought, and they're all pretty small and they're well managed. Going back to the screen size, one of the things, the nicest improvement they've made is the original 3DS, because of differences in processors, if you played an original DS game on it, it basically looked like it had been blown up 3 or 4 times.
Oh.
And so it was really pixelated. I could not play DS
games.
games.
Yeah, especially with like a DS era game, that would be really effective.
It looked like shit. Well, the 3DS is even bigger, obviously. It's twice as big, and I was worried, well, are they just going to, fuck things up with that again? They actually fixed it. And I don't know what they did or how they did it, but they made these games look really good. Now, it's not perfect. You can still tell it's been blown up a little, but considering the age of the game, I'm putting in the first DS game of all time, Super Mario 64 DS, and I'm just going to show Sean this. For a game of its age, at that screen size, that looks pretty good to me.
Yeah, that looks... Yeah, it doesn't look particularly blown up to me at all.
No. And so I'm just, we're just playing Super Mario 64, and I know how this game looks. I've played the DS version probably 5 times all the way through. And so I know what this game looks, and it looks like how I remember it. That's the biggest improvement for the XL. If you were a 3DS owner who was disappointed with how the original 3DS handled your DS library, that's the main reason to get the XL. It fixes that issue, and this is a cool feature, Sean. The original 3DS had this also, but it was too small really to use it. If you still don't like how they look at full screen, you can hold down the start button while you start your DS game, and it'll play it smaller in its original resolution. And while on the original 3DS the screens were too small for that to really make a difference, here, now it looks good.
Yeah.
So it doesn't take up the full screen, but now it's in its original resolution. But I don't need to play it that way, because when it's blown up, it doesn't really look blown up. So they fixed that, and it's the same with the Game Boy games. Just the way they emulate everything on the system's hardware now is vastly improved. So your DS games, I've gotten a lot of value just these last couple days out of playing some of my favorite DS games on the system and seeing art I never really noticed before, because at that size it just looks better. Mm-hmm. It's sort of like blowing up a movie to IMAX, I would compare it, where sometimes it can get a little blurry because it might not have been meant to see at that particular size, but the benefits outweigh the costs because it's just so cool to see a movie like that and play a game like this. So that's really cool. It makes everything you own with the DS library and the 3DS and your virtual console stuff worth more. And that's why I think I really like this system and this redesign. Everything else you sort of know about the system, the cameras, the front-facing, back-facing, they're all there. They've really changed. Nothing has been taken away. It's not like where they went to the DSi and got rid of the GBA slot.
Yeah.
Which was stupid.
Yeah.
And I don't mind the 3DS not having the GBA slot. We're far enough removed, it doesn't need that. But,
Yeah.
I mean, that's 2 generations later. They don't need to have it. But with the DSi, I always thought that was weird because it's still the same generation.
Yeah, no, it's a weird feature to take out. Because, I mean, it's like, the DS couldn't play Game Boy Color games.
Right.
So, yeah, at a certain point, you can't really expect them to be backwards compatible.
Right. But no, I really love the XL. I guess that's my review. Again, if you have a game that has sort of poor graphics, you will notice it on the bigger screen. But that's the game's fault, not the system's. And the games that have tremendous graphics, and most of them do, look beautiful on this screen. Let's give a quick review to the new Super Mario Bros. Game that just came out, literally titled New Super Mario Bros. 2. And that title is fucking erroneous as hell, because it's the 3rd New Super Mario Bros. Game.
I haven't really been keeping up with that. This new era of Mario games, like what?
Okay,
why is it called 2, but it's 3?
Okay, New Super Mario Bros. Was the first original Mario game for the DS, and it was a new side-scrolling one, but with 3D graphics, and it was really fun. People loved that game. It's one of Nintendo's best-selling games of all time. So the sequel was for the Wii, and it was called New Super Mario Bros. Wii, and it was the same kind of game, but for the Wii. It was a lot of people actually assumed it was a remake because they didn't call it 2, but it was 2. It was all new levels. All new gameplay. It was all based around co-op and stuff. It's still the best one in that series. It's incredibly difficult. Like, they went back to NES level difficulty, and it is fucking hard to beat. Thomas and I, we were playing that co-op. Took us a long time on some of those levels, especially World 8 is just relentless. It actually reminds me of Super Mario Bros. 2, not Doki Doki Panic, like the original Japanese.
Oh, the Lost Levels?
Yes.
Yeah.
That kind of difficulty in some parts, where it's like, fuck you, game, you're just screwing me over, I hate you, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So that was the second one. This, I think...
It's Nintendo's really terrible and frustrating practice of naming all their games after the system that it's on, coming to bite it in its ass.
Yes.
It's like, so this should have been New Super Mario Bros. 3DS.
Yes.
Is what it should have been called.
Because you would have had the 3 and the DS, best of both worlds, and then they're releasing the 4th game for the Wii U when that comes out, and I guess they're just calling it New Super Mario Bros. U.
I would just wonder when that's going, because they didn't because there was no really real way to do it with the GameCube name.
No.
So it's like they just need to come up with a console name that they can't do it with, just so that they're not tempted to do it anymore. Because
I know.
At a certain point, it's just getting really fucking stupid. I mean, they've been doing it since, like, the Super Nintendo, with, like, every Super Nintendo game is Super something.
Yeah.
Then Nintendo 64, everything's 64 something. The Wii, everything is something Wii or Wii something.
Yeah. And it's just, the title, this is not any indication of the quality of the game, but it does baffle me because they have shown before a respect for numbering. Like, when they got to Mario Kart 7, they said, all right, we've had too many problems. Yeah.
I still love that title.
I know.
It's like, has there ever been a Mario... Did they ever say that
No.
have a Mario Kart 2?
No.
It's like there's Mario... What was the second Mario Kart?
64.
Yeah, 64 was the second one. It's like, just, Jesus.
I know. But it's just sort of funny to me because they are like, okay, right, we've ran out of ones where we're just naming after the system. Let's just number it and make it clear. But it was the correct numbering. It was the 7th in the series. They weren't treating like the Game Boy one as a spin-off or something. So it was actually the 7th. But this is the 3rd, and it's like the Wii one... It was a Wii game. It wasn't like a spin-off title. It was a fucking console game. That was the second one. Why is it not called 3? What the... It's not the second game!
Dude, I don't know. I'm totally with you.
Okay.
I mean, I'm kind of baffled that they decided, fuck it, we're going to call it Mario Kart 7. I still can't believe... Every time I see Mario Kart 7, I think it's a joke.
I know.
Because it's just so... It would be like if the next Legend of Zelda game was like The Legend of Zelda 15.
Yeah.
It's like, at a certain point, I felt like Nintendo deliberately wasn't numbering their games, because if they did, people would realize, this is Super Mario 24. How many fucking Super Mario games have I bought at this point?
I know. And
It's like with Call of Duty, where it's like, they're like, shit, we need to start coming up with subtitles, because if we name the next one Call of Duty 9, nobody's going to buy this fucking game anymore. So it's like, okay, now we've got Modern Warfare, then we've got Black Ops, they had World at War. They just decided, let's not use numbers anymore, because once it gets too high, it seems ridiculous.
So, let's talk about New Super Mario Bros. 3, as we will now call
DS.
it. Yeah, 3DS. And the first thing I want to note is the 3D effect is odd. And, like... It's a side-scrolling game, and I never expected it to use 3D at all, really, but they actually do try to do it. I mean, it's going to be hard to show Sean, because you can't really, do it with two people. But basically, if you turn the 3D on, I don't know if I hold it like this, you can see it. They just blur the background out, and then the front comes forward.
I can see that, yeah.
And then if you turn it off, it goes back. So, and that's the only 3DS game that's done that. And
it's almost kind of weirdly like they're trying to replicate depth of field in a weird way.
I think that's what they're trying to do, because it's a side-scrolling game. What else are you going to do? I don't mind. You can, again, there's a slider, I just turn it off. Sometimes I play with the 3D on because it's kind of an interesting effect, and I think it's the best of both worlds, but it's always was meant to be a side-scrolling game. That's what the new Super Mario Bros. Series is. So I don't have any problem with there not being a real 3D effect, because if you turn the 3D off, the graphics look gorgeous. They're, really nice. So...
I was just saying, what is the? Why do you have a block on your head that's shooting out coins? I'm really confused.
It's one of the ways you get coins in this game. There's these special blocks that you can find, and then if you run around with it, you get coins that just shoots out of your head.
Oh, I guess. Oh, I guess in Mario logic that makes enough sense.
This is a game where you eat mushrooms and get bigger.
Yeah, or you get a raccoon tail and you can fly.
Yeah. So, and they did. That's one of the things I want to note. The Tanuki suit makes its triumphant return in New Super Mario Bros. 2. Although it was also in it was also in Super Mario 3D Land, but they've been doing some more with the Tanuki suit lately, which is cool, because that's one of my favorite Mario power-ups. So anyway, if you're unfamiliar with the new Super Mario Bros. Series, basically it's supposed to be like a little bit of back history. The last side-scrolling Mario game was Super Mario World for the SNES, and then they started with the 3D ones with Super Mario 64 and Sunshine and Galaxy. And New Super Mario Bros. Was them saying, well, wait, we haven't done a side-scrolling one in a while. That could be fun. Let's use the DS capabilities and do it with actual 3D graphics, but it'll all be side-scrolling. And it was an interesting idea, and it was really the execution that paid off, because it was just them going back to that style of level design that they're really good at with the side-scrolling. And they've never been as ambitious of games as like Galaxy and Sunshine and 64, where those are like really incredible games, because there's like so much level design and there's so many levels and ideas going on, and they're really interesting. This is just supposed to be sort of a modest side-scrolling fun platformer, and they're really good at that. And again, the Wii one is by far the best. It's great. 2 is the weakest one I've played so far of the 3.
New Super Mario Brothers Strikes Again.
Yeah, New Super Mario Bros. 3, the third one, is the weakest one so far because it doesn't have as much sort of new stuff going on. All the levels are new, and the level designs, again, very good. They're very addictive to play. It's if you like Mario, you'll like this. But I think a lot of people have been a little underwhelmed by it because it doesn't add much new. The sort of hook this time is coins, and you've seen ads.
Which is a strange hook to me to use in a Mario game.
So the whole idea is that there's a constant coin counter in the bottom of your second DS screen, the bottom one, and it's sort of the goal is to collect 1 million coins over the course of the game.
That's a lot of coins.
Yeah, that's a lot of coins, and but every level is sort of specifically designed around where the coins are placed, and then how you can get power-ups that help you get extra ones and stuff. And it's really well executed. They don't overplay it as much as the ads have suggested. It's really just it's sort of a new gameplay mechanic that's in there. And what I like about it is that it takes these sort of old-timey levels and adds a new dynamic to them where in past times I didn't ever really care about coins.
That's why I thought it was such a weird thing to do because I've never cared about coins in a Mario game.
And I think that's why it was an interesting choice because now you do and you run to get them and it completely changes how you play levels. So I think it's enough to make this game definitely worth playing and new enough. It's definitely a good addition to the Mario series.
So it earns the new, even though it's 2 or 3 Resurrection or whatever it is.
It is kind of funny. I mean, at the time, they never thought they would make a sequel, so like, New Super Mario Bros. Makes sense. But now they're on the third, and there's going to be a fourth. It's not new anymore.
Just at a certain point, they just keep on shooting themselves in the foot.
I know.
The next thing you know, it's going to be Super Mario Brothers 27.
Yep.
Like, well, it's the 27th one, so that's what we're naming it. We're just doing numbers from now on.
How would you even count the Mario series, though? Because
I don't know, because it's like, do you start counting, like, all the spin-off games? Because there are hundreds. There are literally hundreds at this point of just, like, Mario Tennis's, Mario Golf, just, like, Mario teaches you how to type.
I have Mario Party 9 back at my house.
God, the Mario Party, it's like, I'm surprised they haven't come up with, like, new Mario Party Wii U Super Extravaganza Edition or something.
No, but New Super Mario Bros. 2, I was glad to have it. It's sort of been a fallow period for 3DS games lately, so it was good to have a new one. And, you know, Nintendo at this point, they can do no wrong when it comes to the main Mario platformer titles. There's I don't know who it is directing these games. They're fucking geniuses at platforming and level design. And this one, if it's a little underwhelming compared to recent games, it's still very, very good. I mean, the best 3DS game so far, and one of the single best games I've ever played, is Super Mario 3D Land. And that's sort of like the next iteration in the Mario 64 Sunshine Galaxy line, where it's all you're playing in 3D. It's that kind of level design, and it's sort of like I'm getting 3D mixed up. It's the 3DS, so that kind of stereoscopic 3D, but also like in 3 dimensions of gaming. So
it's like 27 dimensions.
Yes, at that point. Anyway, but it was fantastic. Some of the best level design I've ever seen. So creative, so audacious in parts. Some of the things they would do and throw at you was just crazy. And what was fun about it is that the first 8 worlds, like you think it's just an 8-world game because it has this map, 8 worlds, and you're like, okay, I get to the end of the 8th and I beat Bowser. And the first 8 were kind of easy, and I'm like, well, that's a little underwhelming. And then 8 more open up at the end, and it's a total trick. And the next 8 are incredibly difficult and really, really good. And so it took me a long time to beat. I spent all summer playing that damn game. And it was also easily the best use of 3D I've ever played, where you needed the 3D on to play it, because it was all based around depth of field and things like that. And it was a really fun integration of 3D. Like, it proved to me 3D can be a gaming tool, not just a visual component. So that was really neat, and I get to play it on the XL now, too. So anyway, that's the Mario stuff, that's the XL. Anything else we should talk about with Nintendo handhelds or anything?
I don't know, do you want to just talk about the weird tradition of releasing a kind of bad version, and then like a year later releasing a really good version of that console?
Yep, and that Thomas and I, my brother, were talking about this the other day, because we've owned most of these. It's literally gone back to the original Game Boy.
Yeah, no, it has.
Where the original Game Boy was, and this was actually one of their least flawed ones, but the original Game Boy was big and it had the green monochrome thing.
Yeah.
It was as much as they could do at the time, but then later on they did the Pocket version, which perfected all of that. It was now black and white, not green. It was small, it was good to hold.
I forgot about the fact that it really wasn't black and white. It was green and white, which is green-black, which is so weird looking.
I have an original Game Boy, and it's almost unplayable now. It looks so shitty with that. But okay, so they fixed that. That was the second iteration. Then they did the Game Boy. The Game Boy Color had no second iteration because it was short-lived.
Yeah, and it was almost kind of... It was weirdly... It's like I don't know. The Game Boy Color is kind of weird to me.
Yeah.
And how it fit into like all the different iterations.
But the Game Boy Advance, you want to talk about this one?
Yeah, the Game Boy Advance is not like I don't think the Game Boy Advance is terrible, but it's a weird. It's not a aesthetically pleasing design. No. I don't like how the Game Boy Advance looks.
Where the screen is in the middle and the buttons are on either side.
Yeah, it's almost kind of like you're playing it on like a or not on a Nintendo Entertainment System controller. It's like where it's just kind of it's a little more smoothed out, but that's kind of what it feels like. But then they released the Game Boy Advance SP, which is my favorite head because the one thing I don't necessarily like about the DS is that I don't just personally I don't like playing sort of like 3-dimensional games. Not like the 3DS 3D, but like, the Super Mario 64 type 3D. I like playing like 2D games, like old Final Fantasy games or old Mario games.
For handheld.
Yeah, for handheld, because that's just kind of it's easier for me that way. I can get into it, and it's a lot easier, especially if you're on the move to play a game that's in those 2 dimensions. So the Game Boy Advance SP is my favorite handheld system. I still play it sometimes for like Pokemon games or like old Final Fantasy games.
I break it out all the time. It's fantastic.
Yeah, because it's like this little rectangular box, and it opens up, and it's got the screen, like the screen folds out, and the screen's up top, and then it's got like this little rectangle at the bottom that's a controller. And it doesn't look like it would be really ergonomically comfortable, but it really is.
Oh, it's so great.
It's a really comfortable system, but by far the single greatest improvement and what just like made handheld gaming possible, like I can't even imagine playing anything that doesn't have this, is the backlight on the screen. It's like going back and playing Game Boy Advance normal after playing on the SP. It's like almost impossible.
It is.
I don't even understand how I played those games back in the day, because it's like you'd have to angle yourself just perfectly where you're getting enough light on the screen, but not too much that it like overblows everything and you can't see anything at all on the screen.
Well, here's something we should note. The original version of the SP had a front light, and at the time that seemed like the most ingenious thing ever. It looked awesome. It perfected the Game Boy Advance formula. They later went back and redesigned the SP, though, with an actual backlight with 2 levels of light, and that one is much improved. That's the one I own now. I rebought it, and it is my favorite handheld. I'll just say that, too, along with Sean. Because, especially with that actual backlight, everything looks so gorgeous. It's so well lit. The graphics shine through so well. And it makes your Game Boy and Game Boy Color games look so beautiful with that light behind them.
Yeah, it's so, Game Boy Color games look so much better with you being actually able to see the graphics.
Yeah.
And then also, it's really compact, so it is something that you can just, like, fit in your pocket and pull out whenever you need it.
That's what I love about it, and again, it's my favorite also just because the library is so huge. It plays Game Boy, Game Boy Color, and Game Boy Advance.
Yeah.
And that's thousands of games.
Yeah.
So, like, I still use it all the time for my whole giant library of those, and it's what I play it on. I own my Game Boy Color and my Game Boy just for sort of nostalgia's sake, but I never use them because they don't have a backlight and they're not as comfortable.
Yeah.
So, SP was awesome.
Yeah, the Game Boy Advance SP. I mean, it's so much better than the Game Boy Advance, just like aesthetically, ergonomically, and in just the actual design feature of having that light so you can actually see things, which is seems so stupid that was. I don't know like where the technology was at the point, but it might have been impossible. It's like I can't imagine how handheld gaming caught on without that light. Like I still don't understand how I was able to play those games.
Right. Well, anyway, the Game Boy Advance, we should note, also started. So it started this whole trend of the second iteration is the best.
Yeah.
It also started the trend where the third iteration was shit.
What was the third iteration of the Game Boy Advance? I don't even remember this.
The Game Boy Micro.
Oh, holy shit! I forgot about that.
I am ashamed to say I bought a Game Boy Micro.
I didn't even know anybody bought that. I thought this like
awful. It was awful.
It's do you want? It's like, do you have like no pockets? It's like, where do you just have to like? You would never have any pockets, but you always need to have a Game Boy with you. So it's like you need something that can comfortably fit in your pants. It's basically, I think that's what the Game Boy Micro is designed for.
You can smuggle it into prison through your ass.
Yeah, it's like who needs something that small? It didn't make any sense. It was already a portable device.
If you don't know what the Micro is, it was. It basically took the original Game Boy Advance design, made it like a third the size with this tiny postage stamp screen, and only played advanced games. And I think I was just brainwashed by Nintendo Power at the time because I actually owned that magazine, and I got one, and I felt awful.
You owned Nintendo Power at the point where they were making the Game Boy Micro?
Yeah.
Are they still like?
Yeah, they're still doing it. It's a good magazine. It's just at that point.
But it's like at this point, why do you need to buy a magazine anymore?
Well, I mean, we're getting time mixed up. This was back in like 2002. I mean,
was it that early? Man,
yeah.
Fuck. Game Boy Micro.
Yeah, I mean, I can look up the date, but I know the DS was 2004, so it couldn't have been later than 2004, right? Anyway, so Game Boy Micro was a honking piece of shit. September 2005, that does not seem right. When did the DS come out?
I don't know.
We're looking this shit up.
Yeah.
Anyway, but yeah, so the Game Boy Micro was 2004. So I owned a DS and I bought I am a terrible human being.
I thought the Micro came out later than when you said.
What the fuck did I do?
Yeah, why? Like, what's the point?
I don't know.
So you already owned what, like 3 consoles that could play the Game Boy Advance games at that point. One of which was absolutely incredible, and then you bought a tiny little shitty version to play the games that you could play on 3 good consoles at that point. Why?
I don't know. I do not know.
Did you have to smuggle a Game Boy Advance into prison? Like, is
maybe
that what happened?
I don't know. Maybe I took stupid pills that week or something. Oh well. Anyway,
I don't know who you are anymore.
I think it was all part of like God's plan, so we could talk about it on the podcast.
I guess.
I mean, I got to talk about it. So what was it? So 2005. I wasn't that old then. I was 13. I didn't. I wasn't a huge person then. But my point is, that I was more of a kid, which is the demographic for that, and it was small, and my hands still did not fit that thing. Like they were so big, they were like covering the screen when you played it. It was like so hard to play. It was a piece of shit, honking piece of shit.
Did it have? We forgot about another improvement the SP had, that it had a rechargeable battery instead of having to take AA's. Did the Game Boy Micro? Do you remember?
Yeah, it had that.
Okay.
So it was,
at least you didn't have to get like tiny little baby batteries.
It had the backlight and everything, and I think one of the reasons I actually got it is because at the time they didn't have the backlit SP out yet, and it had an actual backlight and it had like 5 levels, so it was visually better than the SP, except it was tiny.
Dude, so it's like really. So it doesn't. Really, so it's like well, it's really bright, but I can barely see it.
It was sort of like the opposite strategy of the XL, where it's like we could make it bigger. No. Smaller.
Make it smaller. It's like we could make a better version of it. No, let's make a shittier version of it that nobody will want to play.
Except for stupid Jonathan. Anyway. Yeah. So that was their tradition. So we got the first one, decent but not great, a lot of problems. Second one, perfect.
Yes, awesome.
And then the third one, what the fuck? And I think that's basically what the DS did
Third
too.
one, scam. That's what it is.
The Nintendo DS... obviously, there's a ton of cool things about what they did. They added the 2 screens. They sort of redesigned. They have better shoulder buttons, all this kind of stuff. But the original DS had this weird clamshell design where it was, for one, it was a giant fucking thing. Like this 3DS XL, I think, is still like about the size of the original DS.
Yeah, but it has so much more screen space. Whereas the original DS had you just used up all the space that wasn't needed, just like like housing the buttons.
It was this like giant mess of plastic. The bottom part of it was really thick, and then the top part was like it was bent down on top, and like because of that, dust could get in really easily. It did not really shut. All these issues, and it only had 1 backlight level, and it was really dim. Mm-hmm. And then the DS Lite came out, and the DS Lite is the same. It's the same level of quality as the SP. It's just incredible. It was like an Apple product where it was all white, it was all seamless. They even had a filler cartridge for your GBA slot if you weren't using it, so you could put that in. It was all matte, so it felt really good on your hands and everything. And they moved the stylus into a better position on the side. Everything about it was perfect, and the screens were beautiful looking. Like they improved the graphics. It had 5 levels of backlight or something like that. Just looked really good. Everything was perfect about it. And did you ever own one?
No, I stopped at the Generation 1 DS, which was like the Generation 1 DS wasn't terrible, but it definitely was poorly designed enough that I just decided basically not to ever buy DS games and just like buy some more Game Boy Advance games and just use my SP at that point. And that's where kind of like my handheld gaming stopped.
Well, the DS Lite was definitely worth the upgrade, and I never bought anything past that for the DS because the next one was the DSi, and
which was an Apple product apparently.
I know DSi. Now DSi was not a honking piece of shit like the other ones, and I've never really played one all that much. My cousins have one, so I've looked at it. But it made the kind of baffling decision where they got rid of the GBA slot. And it wasn't like this was the next generation. This was just another redesign.
Yeah.
But not only, I mean, on one level you can say, well, maybe, it's for kids who don't even know about the GBA. But a lot of DS games used the GBA slot. The Pokemon games all had trading capabilities where you would put your GBA game in and your DS game, and there was new things you could unlock. Mm-hmm. So that's gone with the DSi. Yeah. And Pokemon is marketed towards fucking kids. So
and like all like the trading and that kind of stuff is a huge part of Pokemon, especially for when you're a little kid.
Yeah,
that's where you make your money.
Right. You like beat up kids in the playground, steal their Pokemon?
No, I'm saying for Nintendo, that's where they make their money. It's like by getting all the little shits. Like 5 versions of the same games.
I'm imagining
all 1 million Pokemon.
Yep, I'm imagining this like mafia ring in the playground of people trading Pokemon for money.
It's like, I heard you got an Articuno.
You got the briefcase. Anyway, so I like how you went with Articuno. I just thought of the most obscure fucking Pokemon.
Well, I was just thinking legendary. I was thinking something high class.
I gotcha. Anyway, so it was just a weird decision, and I think it didn't like ruin some of the stuff the Lite did, but it definitely made it a little clunkier. It made it a little bigger. Didn't close as well. There were stylus issues. It wasn't as good. And I guess there was also a fourth iteration that I never got called the DSi XL, where it was like the same idea behind the 3DS XL, where they took the DSi and gave it big screens. People liked that one. I never played it, so I can't comment on it. So, I guess the fourth iteration was good, but still had no GBA slot, which just seems baffling again. So
yeah.
So it was the same thing where the DS and the DS Lite was good, DSi was bad. And then now we got the same thing where the 3DS, which was actually probably the best like starting point system because the 3DS had not all that many problems in terms of just design.
Yeah, it was just the games.
But at the XL, I mean, Sean, you can already tell from we've done this podcast how much of an improvement this thing is.
Yeah, no, it's a lot more impressive system.
Yeah. So, anyway.
Now we just have to wait for the 3DS XX New L to... and see what the honking piece of shit that one will be.
I know. I wonder what they're going to do. Like, are they going to remove the 3D?
They're gonna take away the 3D and put in the GBA slot instead.
That would be funny. I do think it would have been cool if for the XL they could have found a way to put the GBA slot in to make the ultimate Nintendo handheld. Like, it could play everything they'd ever released. That would be awesome.
Yeah.
It would be unfeasible, but...
Yeah, it would probably cost a lot of money.
Yeah.
And it would probably be really big and unwieldy. It would have like 5 different slots.
Yeah. Well, it's kind of funny. We were talking about the GBA slot and why it was weird to remove it because you needed it. That's actually something I'm thinking about on the Wii U also, is they've removed GameCube functionality.
Oh, have they?
That makes no sense, because think of how many Wii games use the GameCube controllers.
Yeah, no. It's like... Although, I should say that it's like, it always... Every time I realize with my Wii that I can play GameCube games on it, I feel a little bit surprised just because the GameCube discs had those like, the tiny little shitty discs that I have no idea why they did that.
No.
But it's just like... And then every time I'm like, oh, man, I kind of want to play Mario Kart Double Dash, but... Oh, wait, holy shit, I can't! Because my GameCube is like basically busted at this point, because it's so old that I was like, oh, yeah, I can play it on the Wii! Well, it's really, like... I can just put this little tiny disc in the normal disc slot, and it just sort of goes in. And every time I feel like this is going to get stuck in there, and my Wii's got to break now.
We play GameCube games in it all the time. It doesn't break.
It's like the special occasion that I decide to play an old GameCube game. I'm just always just amazed. I'm like, I can't believe this works. This totally should not be working right now.
But it was kind of funny because the whole Wii was designed basically as a GameCube redesign, where it's got everything that GameCube could do. It's got all the same controller slots, memory card ports, all of that. And
graphics quality.
Yeah. So who knows? I don't know why they took it out.
But no, it's just like with the GameCube disc. It would be like if you had like a normal Game Boy Color and then you dropped like a DS chip into the port and it just somehow magically played. That's what it feels like to me.
You're totally right. Well, anyway, so that's the 3DS XL and our sort of Nintendo retrospective sort of thingy topic. Anything else you want to talk about before we sign off, Sean?
I think we did a good job here covering the long history of portable consoles and the weird re-releases and redesigns that Nintendo is wont to do.
Yes. So, next week we are going to talk about Doctor Who. We're going to finally get this ball rolling.
Doctor Who?
Yep. The BBC still will not announce the fucking premiere date. We think it's September 1st, so we're going to talk next week, and the week after that will be our review of the premiere and whatever other things are sort of on our minds. So, next week's just going to be a Doctor Who celebration because, let's face it, whenever we talk about Doctor Who, it's a celebration.
Yes.
I'm going to bring my toy Sonic screwdriver, and Sonic's going to... Sonic. I called you Sonic.
I'm kind of flattered. Thank you. I am Sonic the Hedgehog.